To discuss the sell-off, how investors are reacting to this wild week, I'm joined by Caleb Silver, editor-in-chief of Investopedia. It's always great to have you on because you always have a great sense of what people are the regular people, what are they really looking up? What are they searching? What are they thinking? This is a wild week. We don't see a week like this. This is 2008 material.
Right, so we've been looking at the search traffic, and the biggest increase in some of our articles and terms on the site shouldn't surprise you to hear some of these. What is a correction? What are the withdrawal limits on savings accounts? People are thinking about pulling money out of their own bank account. What's a bear market? How do circuit breakers work? Because they're thinking that with these big sell-offs, the stock exchange might halt trading. What is a falling knife? Nobody wants to catch one of those these days.
Right.
What are the top 10 most leveraged ETFs? We're looking, some people trying to play the leverage game here, and they're looking at how to short the S&P 500. Fascinating, as people are freaking out and looking at how do I position myself in this market and what do some of these things even mean?
Right, and you're talking about corrections and bear market. I mean, when you look at the S&P 500 this morning, about 95% of the S&P was in correction territory of 10%, right?
Over 20% was in a bear market, probably more by now.
20% of the S&P is a 20% move, which would be the bear market. Yeah, absolutely. You had a few survivors this week. You were mentioning some of the drug names, right?
I came in here to talk about it. 7 survivors in the S&P 500 that have actually been positive since February 19th. About an hour before I came, most of them were negative, except for 2, Regeneron Pharmaceuticals and Gilead, which is working on some sort of a cure. So the survivors and the companies that have been able to perform well in the last 5 days has been very thin, and it gets thinner all the time. Yeah,
and you know what else we saw? We saw the mask companies like 3M and Alpha Pro and Lake. They make the hazmat suits. Those are some of the names that have sort of squeezed through the market. But for the most part, everything's sold off, folks, right? So we don't know what's going to happen on Monday. But so you turn your attention to dividend payers, because even with a little bit of a sell-off, a dividend solid company is a good thing, right? So tell us about that.
So we were looking at companies with the big S&P 500 companies, widely held, with the highest dividend yield, but some of the worst stock performance. And why are they still widely held? Well, some of them are in some major portfolios. Shouldn't surprise you to find that 4 out of the 5 are in the energy sector. So we're looking at Occidental with a big dividend yield, 9.87%. Berkshire Hathaway went in with a very big position in Occidental, and as you know, it's been part of a takeover or an acquisition conversation for the past several months. But why would Buffett own a company like that? Well, for the 9.87% dividend yield, you're getting a nice little check every month from that. We looked at Ford also with a dividend yield of 8.6%. The stock's been absolutely dismal over the past year. Schlumberger, an oil services company, right? This has a dividend yield of 7.45%. These companies in the oil and energy sector are in a lot of trouble given the decline in energy prices and the fact that we're moving away slowly, but from that fossil fuel economy. ExxonMobil, dividend yield of almost 7%, and Altria, 8.14%. But the stock performance on these companies has been terrible. Every stock performance has been terrible in the past week, but these in general over the past, since the beginning of the year and over the past year have been doing very poorly, although the dividend yield is what's holding on to a lot of their investors.
So everybody loves a good dividend yield, particularly when you have no alternative and bond yields are at the lowest ever on record.
We've been doing this a long time, and that's pretty
so, I see why people are starting to chase dividend yields. I also think it's interesting that people are interested in shorting the S&P 500 after what was the fastest sell-off. It puts us right into correction territory. Do you think people are still thinking there's a lot of room to the downside? I mean, why would they want to short the S&P at this point?
Well, either because they think there's a lot or they're watching the headlines every day saying this has got to go lower, this has got to go lower. But you and I know, and hopefully your viewers know, you can't time this market. It's not, you can't pick the right time to short it. You can't pick the right time to buy back.
Right. We already saw China come back. We saw some of the cruise lines coming back. We saw some of the other names. We showed some of the energy stocks, the 5 big ones in the XLE. 3 of the 5 had up arrows today.
Sure. And the SOX, the Philadelphia Semiconductor Index, at one point went positive today for a half a minute. And the stocks that are the biggest stocks that are within that, the Nvidias of the world, the Microns, the high performers of 2019, they have been, they tried to make a comeback today, but it's hard to time this because the sell-off has been so accelerated and so intense. We were at record highs about 6 days ago.
Yeah, and there's nothing to say that we won't be at record highs again. I don't know. This market has been very resilient. It kills me to talk about 1,000-point days, but we were down over 1,000 points today. I'm not sure what happens at the close, though. Yesterday, we had some very heavy selling going into the close.
Going into the close, as everyone knows, it's the percentages that matter. The points are big because the market has gotten so big, but the percentages are also eye-popping when you're looking at 3.5%, 4% declines in a day on a major index. That'll catch your attention.
What do you think about the earnings comments from Goldman Sachs this week, talking about that we could have basically flat earnings, right? No earnings to speak of. The S&P could go down to 2,900, then back up to 3,400. I think sometimes people listen to that and then they take it as, oh, well, Goldman Sachs says we're going down, and maybe they sort of say, I'm going to trade on that.
Right. Well, what's interesting is that Goldman had been one of the more bullish houses on Wall Street until this recent note, because I read their notes every single day,
right.
And all of a sudden they're talking about zero profit growth in the S&P 500 as a whole for the first quarter. You can see that happening when companies like Microsoft, Coca-Cola, and Apple are pulling in their revenue forecasts. You can see that happening. We're looking at a screenshot of our Investopedia Anxiety Index. This measures search volume to the most fearful terms on our site, so bear market, correction. And we charted that against past moves in the market. The China tariffs from 2018, that shook the market in late December. The US-Iran tensions at the beginning of the year. But then people really started freaking out and going into researching these terms in the past 2 weeks on our site. And we always see that happen. When people start looking up these terms, the market usually sells off about a week or two later. And sure enough, that's what's happened here.
When I look up a term, I think nobody's paying attention. Now you make me realize if I'm looking up something, someone's listening, someone's paying attention, so you're definitely showing
People try to learn first and then take action second, and that's what we see on Investopedia.
And the VIX, obviously, we've seen above 40 this week, or today. So it's pretty amazing to see the volatility, the fear gauge, and we know that it's not just going to end just like that. Right?
Everyone's saying, when's it going to be over? When's a safe time to get back in? If I knew, I would not be here talking to you right now. I'd be trading it. But we have to wait and see. And for individual investors, it's time to be patient. Let this settle out, then find your entry point and reestablish your portfolio.
Right. And don't sell and lose all your money. That's tough, too. All right. Caleb Silver, thank you so much. Editor-in-Chief, Investopedia.